audio issues fixed. We are back with the flagship podcast. Apologies for that. We had a little technical hitch, as you tend to with live broadcasting. You always risk that.
Of course.
So we begin again with the proper audio, and everyone's sound quality should be better. So we begin again. Martin Melly. There seems to be nothing Rangers can do to stop us. It doesn't matter what they bring to the table. It doesn't matter if they bring their first team. It doesn't matter if we give them the whole half to perform their best. It doesn't matter if they score 2 goals at Ibrox, 2 goals at Celtic Park. There seems to be, it doesn't matter if they've got Raskin, Cantwell, Morelos, Kent, Alan McGregor in goal, Goldson back. It doesn't matter what Rangers do. There is absolutely nothing they can bring to the table that seem to be able to unseat Ange Postecoglou's Celtic.
Keep going, mate.
Nah,
I think it's starting to get to that 90s for Celtic when I grew up, that psychological warfare of how do we beat this team? How do we do it? They don't play well. They're not that good. All our players are better. We're better. We're just simply better. Celtic are in another cup final. They beat their biggest rivals. We've got the Scottish Cup to come, potentially a treble. It's tremendous. This game, I was worried about it. The closer it got to the game, for a change, I seemed to get more confident. When the lineup came out, I felt a lot better. And I just enjoyed it. Enjoyed the victory because it was a different enjoyment today. But usually it's just a relief. But this one was like, no, this just reaffirms everything I already know. This Celtic team are really, really good. And like the Office meme, where we didn't quite get it under Brendan Rodgers, but we're living in the good old days, guys. So just embrace it. Embrace it.
We're going to, obviously this will go out as a second take, Stephen. So if you're watching the podcast, it looks slightly different. We are recording from our live build-up studio.
Set B.
Yeah, Set B. We rearranged it. We're in the back lot of 20-minute Tim's Towers. We rearranged it to go live to the page. And Stephen, yesterday I was nervous. There's no doubt about it. I thought that would be one Glasgow derby too far for Celtic. But I just feel so stupid for doubting Ange now.
Yeah, look, I've also heard all the excuses as well. And the kind of general theme of our At the Match podcast where we were at the game was that they can't have any excuses now because that was full strength. You rhymed off all the renowned names that they can call upon for that game.
I mean, how much Beale shit have we had since the beginning of the season? And you think to yourself, like, we said at the last game, or you said at the last game, there's literally no hiding place for Michael Beale after this. If we beat them at Parkhead, he's absolutely out of excuses. After that, they still managed to get some excuses, and Goldson not being in the team. That seemed to be the final excuse. I can't think of a single one now. And even after the game, he was like, I think we're going to have a rebuild in the summer league.
A massive rebuild.
I can't fucking hold that. I can't hold that.
It's gone from a refresh to a massive rebuild within the space of a couple of weeks, it seems like. So, look, the game itself, having been a little bit tense in the second half, of course, because they seem to have a bit of territorial advantage. A few chances, one that hit the post, and then, do you know what? I've seen that Sakala chance back again.
How did he miss that?
A shocker. He's fond of that, isn't he? It was usually him that hits the side netting from quite close range, but that was a bad one. Like you see,
Roberts vibes, that one.
Do you know what? It actually was. But the last one in our previous game at Hampden was quite a hard chance to take, but this one was a shocker. The whole goal was gaping. But you look at the game, how it was played, right? Celtic were on top in the first half, in my opinion. I don't think there's much debate about that. I thought Celtic were really good. Not amazing, but they were really good. I thought they were the better team. And they took the lead and went into half-time with the lead that they deserved. In the second half, arguably Rangers were the better team, but took nothing from it. No. That's just how it works. It's just as simple as that. That's how football works. Yeah, it's, exactly that. It took the words right out of my mouth. That is simply how football works. You have to turn this advantage, being the better team and all that, into something, and they failed to do it yet again. Completely toothless up front, completely toothless, and that's not a Sakala joke with the gap between his teeth. They have nothing for all the amount of attacking talent they can call upon. Cantwell's the new big thing. Ryan Kent is a previously £7 million talent that was the most talented player in Scotland. I've been told today and all that. So the amount of players they've got, Morelos is a disgrace, quite frankly. And I'm bemused that there isn't more absolute pelters being aimed at him. I can only imagine that the Rangers fans have just fully given up on both him and this season altogether, because he is in worse nick than Lee Griffiths was towards the end of his Celtic term, and a lot of level-headed Celtic fans were really quite annoyed with him about it. A lot of people wouldn't hear a bad word said about Lee Griffiths towards the end, but we were all raging with Lee Griffiths and the amount of or the level to which he had gone completely out of shape. But Morelos has done the same thing, and they're still playing him every single week. He's played. I heard a stat on the way back from the game. In fact, we were in the car coming away from Hampden, and someone on Clyde one, I think it was Gordon, said that. He's played 43 games this season, and I think he's only scored in about 9 of them.
They asked him. I think they asked Gordon Dale on the Clyde one. They said he's played 43 games this season. How many has Morelos been okay in? And he was like that. You're talking single figures. But I think the thing with Morelos is, and we're doing an awful lot of Rangers bashing here, but that's what a Celtic podcast is for. But the thing with Morelos is, we're getting to the stage now where they're literally only playing him because they don't have another striker, and that shows. And it's the same. It's not the same with Ryan Kent, because they've got Scott Wright on the bench, and I'm sure they've got 1 or 2 other guys that could take up Ryan Kent's position. But that guy's completely chucked it, and I don't blame them, because they know now that they can't beat Celtic. They know that. And that's why you get, because see if they're going. Ryan Kent has had a decent career at Rangers. Alfredo Morelos has had a decent sort of longish career at Rangers. These guys would want to go out with a bang against Celtic, knowing they're leaving in the summer. One last push, one last good performance. But when they're coming up against a team that they simply can't beat, they look beat already. Those 2 guys particularly look beat already. Now, there's been so much chat about the gap. How does the gap look? The gap's closed. Rangers are making progress. Immediately, all those conversations are looking stupid.
Yeah.
Immediately, they're all looking stupid. But you're asking yourself, like, well, what is the gap? So the gap between Celtic and Hearts might be, that big for audio listeners. I'm about 13 inches apart there in where my hand's right. But the gap between Rangers, although it might
I could show you some magazines where...
although it's might be a bit smaller than that, it looks insurmountable.
Yeah, see the gap. I mean, the gap is only a thing in people's minds, really. I mean, Celtic are by far the better team, but I'm not ignorant enough to think that the gap will always stay the same. Look, we've seen it happen before, where these things can change almost overnight. You're only the better team until you're not, and we found that out in recent seasons, that it can change like that. But that's a senseless frame of mind to get yourself into, where you just think we're on the verge of just being the better team, because it also assumes that Celtic are just going to completely stand still and let Rangers just get better and better, bring all these amazing players in that Beale's identified, Jack Butland and all these guys that they've been linked with, and Celtic are just going to be like, oh well, that's the gap closed.
We went from a team, we went 9 leagues, they went an invincible title. Within 2 seasons, we were in the treble again, more or less. I mean, how do you let it? How do you shit the nest so badly? And we know the answer, Melly, because the COVID season was fake and didn't really happen, and it was a figment of our imaginations. Before the game, there was a lot of chat, and there was a lot of people, us included, we were sort of worried about how Celtic might line up. All the talk was, and again on this podcast, we were saying our best chances with Hatate and Jota playing. They both played. Having not played for 4 weeks or so for Hatate and a couple of weeks for Jota, both of them coming back for injuries. How do you think they impacted with their appearance?
I think it was a massive confidence booster when the lineup came out, for personally and for the fans. I'd say, I think when you looked at that team, you just thought, that's our strongest lineup going into this. And when they come in, it makes the bench look better as well, because good players are on that. So you could see why Ange went with it. I didn't think there was much chance Hatate would play, but of course Ange was keeping it close to his chest that he's probably fitter than we all thought. So delighted to see them in there. I think the game panned out pretty well for Jota, not so much for Hatate. It just looked like Jota was a couple of weeks ahead of him in the way he could run, the way he wasn't getting caught on the ball. Not that Hatate got it a lot, but he just seemed a half yard behind, and that's understandable. You can get caught in these games, it's frantic, that pitch, everything about it isn't great for a guy come back from injury. But Jota, on the other hand, thought he was very good. I thought he worked really hard right up until the time he went off. I don't think he could have given much more. He scored the winning goal, so
yes,
I'll take that. I think Celtic managed the game really well. It sort of reminded me of the game at Ibrox last season, where Celtic went 6 points clear and it was backs to the wall. We had to defend a bit more in the second half, but we weren't peppered with chances. Joe Hart wasn't clinging on to things. It was just, like Stephen said, Rangers gained a bit more territory. Celtic lost that midfield, not the battle, but Rangers seem to have more space when they change things up in the second half. But Celtic dealt with it, and that's what good teams do. They play good football, or they're resilient. Celtic have got both.
Hatate and Jota, Stephen.
Yeah, mixed fortunes for both. I think it's fairly obvious for everyone. Hatate didn't really have a huge impact in the game, gave the ball away a couple of times. It kind of reminded me of a few weeks ago when Celtic sort of rushed Aaron Moy back into the midfield because of emergencies. We were kind of struggling for numbers, the same injury for Hatate. So I think it was a risk worth taking. That's how I described Moy at the time. It was a risk that was worth taking, but didn't really pay off for that. But I suppose Iwata can probably count himself a wee bit aggrieved to not have started the game. I think he came on and made the difference. But Hatate is certainly a guy who is talented enough that if there is that glimmer of hope that he can come in and make an impact in a game like that, I'm not against just trying it, to be perfectly honest. And Jota is very similar. In fact, more so in Jota's case, because we've seen he's a match winner in these games. He's now he's right behind Kyogo when it comes to like putting the fear into Rangers and scalping them as well.
He should be.
4 goals against them in 2 seasons, which is really it's really some going. And one in I stopped myself a couple of times in the last couple of days calling it a cup final, and that's incredibly disrespectful to Cali Thistle. Right?
Is it though? Is it though?
It's yes, but it's also realistic, isn't it? So
yes.
But to all intents and purposes, because of the stature of that game, it was in effect a cup final, because look, it's the rivalry and all that. I don't need to explain that to anyone. So for Jota to get a winner in that, the nature of it as well, which we'll talk about, pretty hilarious. But the guy's an absolute star, and I'm glad. I was delighted to see him on the team sheet, because the guy's he's magical for Celtic. He's a magician for us, and long may it continue. Really hope he stays at Celtic for as long as possible.
He should go to Brazen more often.
Yeah.
I think it was the risk reward thing with Jota and Hatate. I think with Jota, I think it was fine, but with Hatate, it was maybe right. Okay, do we want to bring him on if we're chasing the game, or do we want to start him and try and get the game into a lead and then bring on Iwata to shore up? And that's the way it turned out, and it was brilliant. I think Iwata and Moy would have been good. Would Celtic have had that attacking impotence in the first half if they didn't have them?
Impotence?
Not the right word
Impetus.
to use. Impetus.
Attacking impotence.
Lucky it's live.
That's Rangers.
I think
Go again.
I know we can't even edit this out.
No, we can't.
I think Celtic got that with Hatate starting, so being able to bring on Iwata and show things up, it worked out, and that's the difference, isn't it? Ange Postecoglou goes out there to win the game, Michael Beale goes out there to stop Celtic winning the game, and who comes out on top?
Well, I was looking at Rangers' approach during the game, and I was really, because before it we were like, well, they've tried a number of different lineups against us. They've tried a number of different tactics. They've tried, and there was even talk before the game, Michael Beale's suppostly moving to 3 at the back next season. There was talk before the game, maybe he'll try this 3 at the back thing. No, what they did was they tried hoofing it long. They had a lot of like nice wee patterns of play and all that in their own half under absolutely zero pressure. I did notice they were all very proud of themselves when they were doing wee triangles around, Maeda. But when they got into our half, they just shelled it. Or they would pass it back to Alan McGregor. How many times did that guy kick the ball out of play?
Embarrassing.
Into double figures. It was really, really agricultural stuff.
Makes you feel really spoiled and entitled when we complain about Joe Hart's.
It does.
Joe Hart's kicking being slightly substandard
Yes.
when you see Alan McGregor just absolutely launching out of the pitch with his legs made of wood.
Blaming everybody else after it.
The world's angriest man. I was watching him towards the end, and I was convinced, having seen it against Aberdeen, was it Miovski scored against Rangers, and someone ran in to pick the ball out of the back of the net, and McGregor shouldered him on the way in like a school bully. I was convinced he was going to assault someone yesterday.
He squeezed water in a ball boy's face in that game, I'm sure, as well.
That was the last game.
Was it? He didn't give him the ball back.
Has there ever been a more objectionable character to have made a living from Scottish football than Alan McGregor?
You seen his Twitter likes, didn't you?
Oh, his Twitter likes. Treat yourselves,
Imagine
folks.
my shock.
You don't even need to, like, if we just said, close your eyes for a second. Think of what Alan McGregor's Twitter likes might be. It's exactly that. It's exactly what you think it would be.
It's not Lee McCulloch's mum. It's not those days.
No.
It's very on brand for Alan McGregor. Put it that way. Treat yourself. Go and find them.
I think one of the great things about Jota was obviously he scored the winning goal, as you put down, and he was really up for it that game. I think for our goal, I was quite impressed that the referee didn't give a free kick, and that screwed Rangers, because I thought every day in the week that's a free kick. Rangers obviously thought it was a free kick as well.
Yeah.
That's why they stopped. I mean, they stopped. You said before we turned the mics on, Melly. The Rangers players stopped as if to say, "You're seriously not giving. This is definitely a free kick."
Even by our standards, we know that's a free kick.
Yeah,
It was it's criminal from them again, but it's the culture that's ingrained in Rangers. I kind of look at it now like Tottenham. I will get onto the goal, obviously, but I just feel that they're like Tottenham. For too long, they've got Harry Kane there, who's just captain. He's just in there for his own records, getting goals and thinking, I'm doing quite well here. Same with Rangers. They've got a captain who's just another beaten by Celtic, another runners-up medal recently. Not getting
he doesn't even get a runners-up medal for that game, does he? He doesn't even get that.
So he's going to be second in the league, semi-final, and a runners-up medal in the League Cup this season. And it's all about apologising after the game. This is the culture that's ingrained there. Second best is all right for them. They think, we're making wee bits of progress. You're 12 points behind a couple of weeks ago. You were 6 points behind last season. Where's the progress? You're out of 2 cups, beaten by Celtic both times. Rangers are stuck in this. They need a complete rehaul of everything.
Don't give them any ideas.
No.
They should have brought in a manager that had nothing to do with any previous regime. They need to clear out so many players. This is criminal that, well, it's great actually for us, but it's criminal that this is just, we tried our best, we're going to make progress next season. It's always the next game, next season. Meanwhile, Celtic are just a juggernaut who have got a style of play, who have got everything. And this is where it comes into it as well. The culture at Celtic is, we'll never stop. There was nonsense on some of the reporting of the game, like, that's nothing to do with the manager. Well, Celtic's manager tells them never to stop.
Yes.
And they don't do it.
Yeah, I think
they
it was
keep going.
I think it was your man from the Herald. I can't quite remember his name, or I might keep his name to myself to save him any further embarrassment. But he did say, what was the tweet? It was a classic. He said, getting caught not playing to the whistle is not the manager's fault, right? But it is.
That's the whole culture.
Yeah.
You breed a culture in a club that you say, we never stop. He said it in his first training session. They laughed, and now look at it. How many goals have Celtic got through this?
It's not the first we've scored against them. We scored against them earlier in the season with a quick throw-in.
Every time, and even before we should get the free kick, we get another free kick, take it quick, run at them. They're not set properly. When Matt O'Reilly's taken down, their defence are in a fairly decent line. There's one guy in behind Tavernier, and there's 3 people in the box. I think it's Kyogo, Maeda and Jota, and there's a goal but by a cross from one guy who is behind 3 of them, goes round, gets the ball, one touch round the side, absolutely brilliant, digs out this cross. Jota comes in behind Tavernier, who's not got a clue, no chance for McGregor. It was brilliant. It was done in a flash, but at the stadium, when the cross comes in, you can see Jota coming in, and you go, if he gets anything on this, it's a goal, because it was pinpoint into an area where McGregor can't come. It's in behind the defenders. All he has to do is just nod it in. It's absolutely brilliant that we continue to do this. It's not a fluke. It's not anything. It's the way Celtic have ingrained this culture in them. Celtic are a winning machine. 1 league loss in 12 years. This is how we do it. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They're scrambling about for things.
What I particularly enjoy, Stephen, about that goal is it was Barisic sleeping, Barisic doing the Barisic not paying attention thing, for Maeda reacted to the loose ball, the free kick that should have been, and then, as Melly said, with the great cross. And then it was Tavernier sleeping, doing the Tavernier as asleep thing.
Yep.
For the goal, everyone got to do their stuff.
Yeah, they did. Barisic as well. See that goal, as much as we like to focus on their rank idiocy in defending the thing, or choosing rather not to defend the thing, Dyson Maeda was incredible for that, absolutely brilliant. But the fact is that that's yet another goal Celtic have scored against Rangers directly between the posts from close range, while the defenders have no idea that their attacker is even in the box. They have no idea he's even there until the ball's already in the back of the net. It's the same case with Kyogo's both goals in the cup final. It happens all the time. Oh yeah, famously Abada. Every time that guy drifts into the box, Abada, it just becomes invisible to Barisic. But Maeda's role in that, absolutely brilliant. Everyone else switched off, and he was the most switched on guy on that pitch. Jota as well deserves credit, but Maeda, you've already said the touch he takes, right? That's not easy. He effectively takes a dead ball, spins it around himself. it's not like in front of him either.
No.
He manages to spin in behind and get across in basically one movement. He's fallen back as well. He's off balance and manages to hang the perfect cross for Jota just to come in and nod it wherever he wants, straight past Alan McGregor, looking absolutely woeful, going for it again. The wooden man. So it was a great goal. All credit to Dyson Maeda for that. I thought he was brilliant the whole game.
He was brilliant the whole game. Ange singled him out after the game. His work rate was unbelievable, and I was a bit frustrated with Maeda. I think on the ball sometimes he's not the best, and I think at points he was pushed off the ball too easily by Rangers players. But there is no denying the work rate that guy puts in. It is absolutely relentless, especially in the second. He's up front in the sort of left attacking position, trying to get the cross in, and he loses it. Rangers win the ball back, and then as Rangers are attacking, he's left back helping Greg Taylor out, putting tackles. And you're like, this guy is so key and so critical to the way we play. And we've said ever since he's arrived, I've not seen a player that plays football the way Dyson Maeda does. There's no one close to it.
No, it's a terrible cliche about Celtic players and footballers more broadly, that like if he had that, he'd be at X, right? And that's kind of the case with Dyson as well. It's like if he was perfect in his decision making and got all of his crosses right, he wouldn't be at Celtic because he's honestly the most hard working striker, or forward rather, in world football, to be honest. I'd be amazed if anyone puts in the level of shift,
the yardage
that he does, the amount of work. And you could talk about guys like Kylian Mbappe who run a lot and are very fast and all that, but that's not the same as work rate. That's not the same as putting in the graft for your teammates. And Dyson is incredible at it. So if he was as skillful as, I don't know, take your pick, a slightly more talented player, and if he got all his crosses right, we would have that guy for one transfer window and he'd be straight out the door to one of the European giants. Because yes, he does. He's quite wasteful with crosses. He overhits them quite a lot. And there was a pass to Kyogo quite late on. I think Kyogo had got the run on Goldson. It was yet another one of those examples where, remember we were talking about it recently, if only we had players that were on the same wavelength as Kyogo, if they could just spot his runs a wee bit more often, we just wouldn't stop scoring. He didn't spot him and he overhit his cross. But to be honest, I don't care. You know, we've got so many players who you could pick out the odd fault here and there, but it applies to a lot of them that they just simply wouldn't be here if we ironed out all of these faults. Starfelt as well. See, if Starfelt was better on the ball, he'd be playing for Barcelona or something. I genuinely think that guy is an incredible defender.
You two were ready to get rid of him a couple of weeks ago.
Aye, because jealousy.
Got the better of us.
I disregard that.
I have to do the listener's job for them here a wee bit and say two podcasts ago you two were talking about that was maybe a guy you need to improve upon.
Well,
do you mean if we sell it to Barcelona at that point we would need to replace him?
Those two things are related, because I do think he could be better on the ball, but for some games like that, we will need, see for the Champions League and projecting into the future, we will need players who are better on the ball in certain positions, and Starfelt was probably one of them. However, his defensive work cannot be criticised at all. I honestly think he's an immense defender, alongside his partner who will definitely come on to. But Starfelt, we could probably improve on him, but on days like that where you're up against a decent team who are putting you under a bit of pressure and all that, there's no one else I would rather have in the trenches than Carl Starfelt. The guy's an incredible penalty box defender.
How many players did he flatten on the day? He definitely flattened Lundstrom.
Yeah.
And he may have flattened Barisic as well.
And there was a number of times where in the same movement, in just the same interception, Starfelt was simultaneously stopping Rangers attacks and starting Celtic ones just by getting in the way, just by blocking off a pass and playing it back into, I think there was one for Kyogo hit it over the bar from just outside the box. That was from Starfelt breaking up the play just 10 yards away from that. A brilliant performance.
Yeah.
I was
just going to not take it back on Starfelt, but give him his due credit. I think going forward, Celtic could improve on him, the passing and all that. I think it's something that he lacks, but him and Maeda,
keep your eye on that, because passing and that is that what you're going to say?
Almost, but it is something that his game lacks. But when you see him as a defender, you go, right, he is everything Celtic need. But there's going to be faults in players while they're at Celtic. He was incredible yesterday. Him and Carter-Vickers will be interesting to see. We'll have a sustained run of 6 games now where it will be Starfelt and Kobayashi, so we'll see how he gets on without his partner. But delighted to see me make my words yesterday. Maeda as well. Incredible shift from the guy, even at the final, just before the ref blew the final whistle, he went down and with cramp. I was like, no wonder, mate. No wonder. But I think Ange sort of, well, we can give Ange credit for doing the old switcheroo of the wingers, but it's a Lenny classic. That's where the goal came from, wasn't it?
Is it any?
Maeda went over to the right.
Is it any coincidence that Neil Lennon's back in the limelight, appears on doing a YouTube interview? The very next game, Ange switches the wingers.
Brendan Rodgers is at the game.
Brendan Rodgers is at the game.
Jock Stein's looking down. It's all the
Mark O'Neill was at the game as
So
well.
he was. Yeah.
All the treble
all the treble winners in some place. So I suppose. Well, so who was the heart of Neil Lennon's defence? He had Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah,
he had Virgil van Dijk. Who was Boyata for Brendan?
He was an important player for a time for Rodgers. Yeah,
Denier for Brendan as well.
That was
Lennon.
Ronnie,
of course.
That was Ronnie. And then Ange has Cameron Carter-Vickers. Is Cameron Carter-Vickers the best centre half we've had at Celtic now? I hear people in the comments already, and I hear people in the chat, and all the sorts of people listening, all the world over will be saying, there's no way Cameron Carter-Vickers is a better player than Virgil van Dijk. What I say to those people is, he's better at Celtic.
He's a better Celtic player.
He's a better Celtic
I thought you
player.
could have been stronger there. What I would say to those people is,
Get
swear
out.
get out, go tuck yourself in. Cameron Carter-Vickers. Every time we talk about him in these glowing terms, and it's only ever glowing terms, there was a little bit of chat recently about how he wasn't at his best in the most recent derby, but it turns out he's been carrying an injury for weeks. The heroics...
What wasn't at his best is still a very good game.
It was
else.
unbelievable.
It wasn't
on
even a bad
Sunday.
game previously. And on Sunday for this semi-final, he was immense again. And see, in the full possession of information that's been happening about Cameron Carter-Vickers, there was a report recently about how he was injured and he was going for an operation, which was quickly, not quite denied, but the Celtic and Ange manoeuvred around it, because it's simply, you don't say, he's really struggling, by the way, target him in the next couple of years. You don't say that in public. So it turned out that this is definitely true, and now that we're through the semi-final, we can all admit it, we can give him the rest of the season off, which is definitely the case.
Chris Boyd had an article about how somebody could get in amongst them, like the old Cal McGregor one.
Exactly. So the heroics he performed in that, in my opinion, puts him up. Like we talk about the greats and the Fraser Forster Cup final and all that. Cameron Carter-Vickers, the heroics he performed on that day with an injury, that's the kind of thing that goes down, it gets written about in football books. Remember Michael Jordan's famous flu game that he played and all that? He played a game with the flu, and people talk about it decades later. Cameron Carter-Vickers is putting in a shift like that for us in a cup semi-final while injured and on the verge of an operation.
And bear in mind, he's still up against Morelos.
This,
it's the immovable object against the unstoppable farce. Do we know what the injury is? Has there been any comment on what the injury is?
No, I'm not sure. No,
There was a period in the game, it might be in the second half, where he went down injured, and I thought, this is it.
That was incredible. The ball comes over from, is it a free kick or whatever, and he manages to sort of hook it, not off the line, but it's going right into the goal line. He hooks it off the line, is down injured because he takes one off Morelos, I think it is. The ball goes out wide, comes back in, it's headed up in the air. He gets up, runs up and heads it away. You were on the deck dead a second ago, and then he went down injured. It was an incredible performance from the guy. He's just the best defender I've seen at Celtic, and that's through a lot of really good players. But this guy, Virgil van Dijk, went on to have a great career. Cameron Carter-Vickers is pissing it against a decent Rangers team. Virgil van Dijk never had that. Cameron Carter-Vickers, roughly the same age as Virgil, a wee bit young.
When he left, do you mean? Yeah, probably, yeah.
And it just looks like he is a colossus there. Virgil van Dijk had things he had to iron out in his game. Cameron Carter-Vickers hasn't had a bad game for Celtic, hasn't had a mistake that's led to a goal, in my opinion. He's just unstoppable back there. If Celtic have him, they will probably win the league.
Well, every time as I started saying there, every time I go to talk about him, and it's always in these glowing terms, I feel like I want to escalate. I want to develop on what I said the previous time. And see, to be honest, to be a guy like Cameron Carter-Vickers, and I've already described him as probably one of the greats already, I don't really care how silly it gets, because in my opinion, I can't really overstate it. I can't overdo it with Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think nostalgia tends to trump things, all things when it comes to talking about footballers, and people in other generations will have their own views on it. But what happens is that players who played, and Paul Elliott is always the example, right? Paul Elliott and Mark Reaper and guys like that, Virgil van Dijk we know about, it tends to be distilled down into the big moments for them. So Paul Elliott scored a couple of goals against Rangers and he was player of the season and all that, but nobody really forgets about all the probably okay average games he had for a crap Celtic team at the time. He stood out, don't get me wrong, but Cameron Carter-Vickers hasn't put a single foot wrong apart from when he was nursing a, now we know, serious injury.
I've never known a player, a defender in particular, to be so consistent every single week for 2 seasons. It's on a relentless record of consistency. We had, the 20 Minute Times live show that we had last year at the end of the season. More news on this season's one coming soon. We had our Player of the Year, and it was Cameron Carter-Vickers last year. To many people's surprise, we're going to obviously have to announce our Player of the Year this year, and we've not even approached it ourselves and discussed it and sat down and decide who we've got. But he's going to be in the conversation. And for me, as good as Kyogo's been, it's between those two. I mean, or Hatate, but I mean, you kind of want to reward the flair players.
Yeah.
But how can you not reward a guy that has been so relentlessly consistent across every tournament, at even in the Champions League, he didn't look.
He's too consistent now to kind of get considered for these things. He's got that standard now, hasn't he? And you say, just another game from him.
There are other guys as well. We've spoken about Greg Taylor and how good he's been this season, but I feel like even talking about him in terms of the Player of the Year is purely an acknowledgement of how good he's been rather than any kind of realistic chance of you getting it, because presumably other things were nominated against The Godfather when it was nominated for the Oscars, but they had no chance of winning it. Greg Taylor's kind of like that.
Well, we do have the Anthony Ralston Award for unexpected
that's
excellence.
Correct,
So Greg Taylor, in many ways, that's more prestigious than both the Player of the Year.
It's more patronising, isn't it?
Or an Oscar, in many ways. The one that everyone wants to win.
Yeah.
A player that's probably not going to get any awards this year, but could have probably left with the man of the match on that occasion, Joe Hart. Some good old-fashioned British goalkeeping.
It wasn't it?
That's what happens when you have a cottage pie, 4 Yorkshire puddings and 3 cups of Tetley for your pre-game meal. Smashing balls out the box, 2 fisting them.
Newspapers down the socks instead of shin guards. Yeah.
Sweeper keeper, my arse. Gadoosh for 90 minutes. Was that the game? For a long time, people have been saying, and we've been saying, and we are opinion setters, so what we say, other people say, that he needs the Fraser Foster game. Now, we have said Melly Groans, I'll come to you first in a second, Melly, but we have said, well, for that to happen, Celtic need to be absolutely abject, be under the cosh for full 90 minutes and have goalkeeping heroics. Joe Hart has made a number of good saves for us, but in that game, I saw him coming for a lot more crosses. He made a couple of good saves, and he ran out and bullied Morelos.
Yeah, I think he was exceptional. I think the only reason I sort of groaned there when you said that was he didn't have saves to make. He didn't have saves to make.
As usual against them.
Not his fault, but I think when we always hear this from Rangers, we done well, and I can always reference that cup final and go, that is a game you should have won. That is a game you should have won. All these other ones that have came after it, you did all right in spells, but that game you were the dominant team for the whole game, and goalkeeping miracles stopped you doing that. Unfortunately, it sort of taints any sort of good performance for them because they won't have that many chances, and also taints good goalkeeping performances from guys like Joe Hart, because you're never going to have a game like that. It was utterly ridiculous.
But before it, our worry was set pieces. That's what we spoke about. We says we were really worried about their set pieces. They got an awful lot of corners and crosses into the box. That was basically their game plan, shelling it into the box.
Good plan, lads.
It was a good plan, but I thought Joe Hart was a key part of stopping that game plan.
Yeah, I think because Celtic had their 2 centre-halves man marking their 2 centre-halves. I think Alistair Johnson was on Morelos again, but Celtic just then get bodies in around zones to try and do some zonal marking. So then it's down to Joe Hart to come and clear anything he can. Now they have bodies around him, which makes it very difficult, but being an experienced keeper, no chances taken. He came out, 2 fist punched anything away, got anything on it he could. No point in trying to catch balls like that because the rain, the pitch, anything can happen with that. So he just cleared what he had to. It was brilliant. He caught crosses when he had to. There's some crosses that were coming in that were low and fizzed in that weren't hitting the ground. He just caught them as if it was nothing, and I'm worried about it skidding through his legs and all that. Not a worry from Joe Hart. Just took so much pressure off Celtic in catching the ball, but also playing out, contrasting him to McGregor, where it was like, what are you doing, mate? You've got time to take a touch. Kyogo closing down McGregor was amazing as well, because you could see how terrified he was. But Joe Hart passing the ball out, absolutely fine, no worries. I was raging at the referee at one point because he stopped Celtic playing out for... I don't know why. He just stopped.
You know why? Because Rangers weren't ready.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
Joe
exactly, I know exactly what
clipped one over to Jota.
Yeah.
He was away and it, no, take that back. Why?
Never said why. And Joe Hart was fuming. It was because Rangers weren't ready. That's exactly why he did it.
All right, Don.
I know there was a Don Robertson. There was a why did
The stand-in, I know.
did we ever find out why?
He did his calf. Gollum did his calf before the game, supposedly. So not only did Robertson get drafted in, they also had to get Beaton. They had to get him off the couch, basically, come in and do his fourth official thing.
Oh right. Or did they move? Or did they all shift down?
He jetted in for the occasion.
They don't have any subs. We can talk about the referee in a minute, but I want to stay on Joe Hart. Stephen, we've said in this podcast again, maybe we're going to have to rewrite some opinions. Joe Hart, maybe an area we want to look at in the summer. Maybe that's an area that we need to consider improving on. But Joe Hart's been, he's been really, really good for us. And that game for me made me think, do you know what? Maybe it's not a Joe Hart problem. Maybe it's a everyone else in this league problem. Doesn't really test the guy, and we don't really get an opportunity to see what Joe Hart is actually made of.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the opportunity.
Well, look, the Joe Hart thing, can we upgrade or replace him? It's unavoidable because he's 36 years old and he only has 1 year left in his contract. Do you extend that? I don't know. Can we get another year out of him at this level and be fairly confident that he can keep up these performances? Yeah, I think we probably could.
Celtic are aiming for the Champions League now, but aren't they? That's
it. But that's a tricky line to kind of straddle as well, where we get rid of or perceive to get rid of players who are very, very good for Celtic in favour of guys who are ready for the Champions League. We've had that chat before about how that's very difficult to do. Yes, you want to bring in talent that's of a or that has the potential to play in the Champions League, but we can't afford Champions League players. That's just not something that's available to Celtic. You're spending 40-50 million on guys who are quote unquote ready for the Champions League. But I do agree that principally we do need a guy who is a little bit more suited to playing out from the back. The same things I've said about Starfelt. I mean, I love Starfelt and all that, but you do eventually need a player who can probably suit the system a little bit more when it comes to playing or being good on the ball. But Joe Hart's been brilliant. Joe Hart's been a great player for Celtic for 2 years, and
we have got another year of him.
Yeah.
And that'll be his last.
Yeah, I think so. If he stays at all, because it just depends what Celtic want to do with this position. If they bring someone in with an eye on the so-called improvement upgrade for the Champions League, Joe Hart's not going to stick about to be Celtic's second choice keeper. He doesn't have to do that. I wouldn't really want that for him either. For the last 2 years, he could have been sunning himself. He could have gone to, what was he sitting at, third choice keeper for Spurs or something?
Yes.
Probably getting paid about 4 times what he's getting at Celtic. So he could have been easily doing that. But the guy's still got the hunger for it, and I don't think he's going to use one of the last years of his career to be a kind of backup or even be in competition with someone at Celtic. He's too good for that. But I think we do need to address the position eventually. But I'm not that concerned about it, to be honest. I don't think it's an emergency. It's kind of like, I don't know, after Craig Gordon and all that as well, I've always thought, right, we can do better with keepers, but it's not an emergency. It's not something that keeps me up at night, to be honest. It's not really a huge weakness that we've got.
No, I think I'm the same. It's not an emergency, but if Celtic are going to try and push to the next level, you think back to the Leipzig game where Celtic get themselves back in the game and he passes it straight to the Leipzig striker and the Celtic are 2-1 down. So
give the guy a break. Everybody's allowed one, you know.
Aye, but he's done it in Europe by Alkmaar and all that. So I think it's not a pressing issue, but I think I've said it before, very rarely in football do you get to ride off into the sunset. Joe Hart coming at the end of the season, potentially a treble, 2 trophies last season.
So you want to cut his deal short? Is that what you're saying?
A Celtic hero, off you go, Joe. There you go.
That's outrageous.
Paint of a Spitfire, off you go. Yeah.
That's absolutely outrageous.
But if he comes
Here's a Seiko.
If he comes into next season and it can go like that with goalkeepers, Alan McGregor, a prime example. How much of a wardrobe does that guy look back? Joe Hart
taking him out the back. Oh, I love you, Joe. You had a good season. So I led into this by saying, maybe in the summer we don't need Joe Hart. Maybe showed us a bit, and Mel's like, nope, get shot of him.
Kill him.
No, get shot of him, but let him go while he's still the hero. I think going into next season, another year on him. I think it will be very difficult for him. But look, I might be wrong, but I think it's a great chance for him to walk away. And he will be looked back on very, very fondly. Craig Gordon there for a number more years. Joe Hart's well ahead of him.
Oh, yeah.
He'll be up there with Foster.
More likeable as well.
Much more likeable.
Right, there was no VAR interventions in the game.
None, yeah,
No
very
VAR.
quiet indeed for controversies.
No need for any Super Vario world, but I mean, there's not an awful lot to discuss. I did say in the post-match version of the Patreon at the match podcast, which is available at patreon.com/20minute Tims, obviously, that I did say that I thought the referee did okay, and I got pulled up for it in the Discord by people saying, well, I thought he was pretty crap. What I meant was, he was like the standard level of crap, the referee.
Right.
And I think I've figured out with these referees, what they really want to do is they want to turn up at the game, get through the 90 minutes as quick and as easy as possible without basically having to make a decision, collect the check, get home. That's basically what the referees want to do. And that's the sort of performance I got from Don Robertson. I thought at times he bought far too much from Rangers. But again, that's just something that we don't do. We don't dive about the place. Rangers do. And there was, in the beginning of the second half, there was 3 free kicks in succession that they looked for and they gave them just about the 30-40 yard mark. That's where Rangers are looking for a lot of stuff. But I thought other than that, the referee was just their usual middle of the road, dismal Scottish referee performance. And in fact, his inability to give them a free kick when it mattered ended up costing them.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it?
The referee, the impression I got early in the game was that he sensed the occasion. Again, I described it somewhat disrespectfully earlier as effectively a cup final. I think he probably got that impression as well. So what I got from the referee was that he kind of sensed that it was a big game, big derby and all that, and he wanted to stay out the way. He wanted to let things flow a wee bit. But that's an uneasy line to tread, that, because
Mount Flow Rider.
yeah.
That makes sense.
It's the kind of bit we usually cut out.
Yeah, that would get cut. You're right.
You do risk eventually sort of letting people away with murder in the name of letting the game flow.
Yeah.
And I thought it got a little bit inconsistent. We've spoken recently about how you can't really talk about inconsistencies across different refs, but you can apply it when it's the same guy making the same decisions in the same game.
Yes.
The bookings got a little bit confusing to me, and it's something I thought about very recently when Kyogo got booked for a deliberate handball, and I said in our At The Match podcast then, I was like, well, if you're going to start doing that, you need to book everyone for handballs all the time.
Yeah,
and Barisic did it again in this game, didn't get booked. So,
Andy's dive.
Andy's dive, yeah, and he'd already previously been booked at that point. So I thought it got a little bit...
No faith.
I thought it got a little bit unpredictable from the ref from a decent start. Again, I think his intentions were good in that he wanted to let the game sort of play out as was intended, but it did get a little bit, as I say, inconsistent and weird.
Well,
No blood on his hands, but
no, not on this occasion. But I did make the point this before the game. If you were so inclined to produce a piece of content, Lord knows I can't be arsed, but that would be a really good game for look at Ron Dobertson's performance from
Ron
the
Dobertson.
Did I mean that? You would look at his performance, right, at the beginning of the match, and then you would watch the full 90 minutes and commentate on it, because like you're saying, like, there would be one tackle that would clear somebody out, right? Free kick. Play would progress. Another exact same tackle, play on, and you're just like, right, is the idea just to keep everyone confused? Keep people guessing because you don't know what's coming up next. Did we want to? Well, I suppose we have to, because it would be remiss of us to let him get off scot-free. Let's talk about Rangers' Great White Hopes. The Great White Hope of Nicholas Raskin, who has done, not even worth talking about Raskin.
Nope.
He's done nothing. He has done nothing since he walked in.
He gets it though. You can tell he really hates them. He really hates the Tims. Remember, he was staring outside Celtic Park and all that. So he really gets it. And again, they just believe all this stuff yet again. Impressed by Todd Cantwell refusing to let Hatate have a drink on the
you're
pitch.
jumping the gun a wee bit, Stephen, because I was going to get to Todd.
Right, okay, yeah. So Raskin first.
Raskin was good because you can tell he's just bought into the culture, because when Maeda gets that ball, Raskin is the closest player to it, but again, passes the buck to somebody else. It's somebody else's fault. You do it. So, fine. Happy with that, because he sat in there with Lundstrom. I'm trying to see, right, where are they getting this from, that he's this great playmaker, the next big thing? Just didn't see it. I don't think Celtic's midfield were brilliant, but They weren't dominated by this guy. They
No.
weren't dominated by Lundstrom. So
I don't even know what to... He's so uninfluential in a game. He lacks influence so much that I don't even know what type of midfielder he is. I don't know if he's creative. I don't know if he breaks things up. I don't know if he's a sitter. I don't know if he's got a trick in him. I don't know what Nicholas Raskin does. He is but useless.
No, the thing is that it has just been decreed from on high that these players are going to be good for Rangers. It's not something that's exclusive to this Rangers team. It goes back years and years. As long as I can remember, they would just sign players and just decide that they were going to be good and just stick to it. I remember it was Bugera and Boomsong and all that. Everybody just decided this guy is a world-class defender, so let's
It's
just
because
work
Celtic
backwards.
have got them.
Yeah, and I think we are almost the opposite. I think we are immediately sort of distrusting of players who come in and they need to earn their corn and for us to call them good. We just sort of treat everybody as crap and then sort of work backwards from there. If they're good, brilliant. But Rangers are the opposite. Rangers are like, everybody's brilliant, everybody's better. Not one of these Celtic players would get in our starting 11.
We sort of side-eye every player that comes in like...
Yeah.
Is this guy the cheap option? Is he a fraud? No, he's good. Rangers.
I remember the Lee Congerton. Remember the list? Remember we were getting we were getting the 9th on Lee Congerton's list and all that. we just assumed that we've been rejected by about 20 other players and we ended up with Jack Hendry.
But you know, full credit to Todd Cantwell, because he is this year's Joey Barton, and I think we've ruined his career. With that TikTok Todd nickname, full credit, it was Stephen that said that first, and I said it on the overlap, and it's basically stuck now. I hope that is ruined. I've seen someone online call him Chod Scantwell, which is almost
Chod Scantwell.
I've seen Can't Win, but I've not seen Scantwell.
So it's almost as good. But that guy is a living cartoon, and. You know, a Rangers supporting friend texted me after I was slagging Cantwell, and they clipped my slaggings on Twitter of Cantwell. I'm going to save this for posterity, and I said to him, save it, because Cantwell, he thinks he gets it. The minute he's walked in, remember before he joined Rangers, he was talking about battle fever and all this. Like, he thinks that he thinks this is Rangers of old. He thinks this is Rangers from whenever, the year 2000 or whenever he's joined. He thinks this is a big move for him, and he's trying to act up to it. But he kind of doesn't get it. He kind of doesn't get it because he's doing no-look passes under no pressure, executed terribly to players in his own team 8 yards away from him. So it's really no effect. He's doing step-overs and he's chopping Celtic players. He's doing the fake throw-in, which is one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. And then that whole crap with the water bottle. And okay, that's great, right? And Rangers fans, you can celebrate this all you want, and you can think to yourself, this guy gets it, this guy gets it. The difference is Celtic have never had a player like that. We have never had a guy that does that. And any player that we've had that loves a wind-up always waits till we're winning.
Yep.
Scott Brown does it when we're winning. Scott Brown never did any of that crap when we were getting pumped left, right and centre. Scott Brown never went a full season not beating Rangers but still pulling those sorts of tricks. And that's the difference. They look at him and go, oh, he's got the swagger and he's getting the moves and he bams them up, yes. But he lost.
Yeah.
And he lost again.
Here's the crucial part.
Yeah.
They lost again.
He has 0 trophies. He has nothing to show for it.
No.
Nothing.
And I had a look at his stats last night. It became, by the way, that's both of you have admitted to having Rangers supporting pals on this podcast. We never talk about it. I only ever mention neutrals because I get it. I had a look at Todd Cantwell's career.
You're my Rangers supporting pal. How's that for a plot twist?
Stitch up. It was a stitch up. So I had a look at Todd Cantwell's career because, again, even after that game, Rangers fans were raving about him. Next season, this guy's got put a front three.
Team round him.
Put up front three in front of him, it'll be a different story. Aye, again, but Celtic could say, see, if we had entirely different players, we'd be better as well. We'd have gubbed Real Madrid last season or this season if we had entirely different players. But he scored 18 goals in his entire career, Todd Cantwell. He's 25 as well. He's no longer this up-and-coming. I remember him breaking through at the time and he looked good. He was linked with Arsenal for about 25, 30 million. But since then, he's just fallen off a cliff. 18 goals in his entire career, and 2 or 3 of them are for Rangers. So, I'm not afraid of him. I thought he was okay in the game. Just
there's a reason these guys end up at Rangers.
Yeah,
there's a reason that all of these guys end up at Rangers, and Todd Cantwell just done
most successful club in the world, mate. Is that why they?
Not for long. Melly, on you go.
Just Cantwell was doing the water bottle thing, but he also done his wee G up the crowd 3 times.
Yeah.
Right, that's fine, mate, but do something with the ball that then gets the crowd going, and he simply didn't do that. He was dropping very deep in the second half, getting a lot of the ball. He never hurt Celtic, hurt Celtic again. First game he was here against Celtic, he was benched. Then it was, when Cantwell plays, we'll beat you. He's played twice now, and he's not had much effect on the game whatsoever. Another one, Tillman, this great player, Bayern Munich will want some buyback clause. He's been subbed in every single game I've played him. I know he went off injured there, but he's done nothing in any of these games to say he's going to be a guy that's a thorn in Celtic's side. Ryan Kent as well, subbed at half time, anonymous, great. So the front four, utterly abject for Rangers.
It was great to see. It really was. It was terrific stuff. I just want to spend the last couple of minutes, because we are approaching sort of wind-up time and there's lots on the agenda that we need to talk about. I want to talk about Celtic subs. Aramoy and Haksabanovic. I thought Haksabanovic was decent when he came on.
Yeah.
And I thought Aramoy was good.
Stick Iwata in there as well.
And Iwata, yeah.
During the tension of a game like that, I was frustrated with Haksabanovic, but it was because he'd wasted that ball out wide. He had a chance to play in Maeda and he played it way, way beyond him. Right, I was frustrated with that at the time, but having watched it back now, he did a lot of good work as well. Just gaining yardage. The thing it's so important in games like that. See, when you are under the cosh and you're really up against it, and it felt like this at the time. Rangers had so much, I use the phrase again, territorial advantage. Didn't really feel like they'd made many chances, but they were advancing on Celtic. See the importance of getting up a ball to a player like Haksabanovic. He just takes it for a run, just beats a couple of players, draws a foul, whatever it is, play a nice pass. It's really important in games like that, and I thought he did really well, apart from that wasted pass, which was unfairly focused on, but it was a big opportunity for him, and he's carrying the sort of wasted chance from the cup final around with him as well. He could have buried them in that game. Aaron Moy as well. I thought he came on and really looked like he'd been given such a specific job to do. This is the impression I got. I can only speculate on
the ball, mate.
Basically, just make good use of the ball, because not everyone out there is doing that. It's kept the ball, kept it tidy, slowed things down when we needed it to. I can't remember him giving the ball away at all.
He was doing Aaron Moy things. He was doing that thing you think he's not going to win the ball, and he gets it, and he's a yard ahead, and he's keeping the ball, and you think that pass is short, but it's not. It's exactly where the ball needs to be.
He did a nice wee slide tackle as well, and I know for Rangers fans, that's it. He's brilliant. But the passing he done was incredible. Just because it brought back that wee bit of control for times at Celtic when they needed it. He'd go out wide and take balls on the touchline like that. Where are you going to go with this? And he'd move out it, and Celtic would still have the ball and move it across the pitch. So I think the subs for Celtic were really well timed. Unlucky for Alistair Johnston. He was having a great game again, and unfortunately,
it's a bad one,
unfortunately got injured. I thought Ralston did quite well when he came on, but Moy and Iwata really brought that control back for Celtic. It wasn't plain sailing after that, but those two guys brought a energy, and I know it's Aaron Moy, but a different type of energy with Celtic. Right, just take a wee breath here, keep the ball and keep it moving, and it just brought back that calmness for Celtic. And weirdly, I think we were talking about it just walking back from the game. I felt better the longer the game went on. Normally you get to feel worse, but you just felt Celtic are in enough control here that they might give up one chance, but nothing more than that.
All caused them problems. When Ange took off Kyogo, I thought at the time that was a mistake, because I thought Kyogo's defending from the front was absolutely priceless from us. But O came on, gave us the option to go long, and I thought he caused Rangers defenders a lot of problems.
Yeah, he always does. He gave them a huge amount to think about in the cup final as well. Even just the sort of unexpected runs in behind. Goldson is by far their best centre-half looking at it, because they were fairly catastrophic when he was out of the team for a few weeks there. They started losing games left and right compared to the previous record under Beale. But he always looks prone to just be caught. He gets away with it a lot, right? So I have to give him grudging credit for that, because he doesn't really seem to be caught all that often. But it always just seems like he's a fraction of a second away from just getting it nipped off his toes. Kyogo was giving him bother as well, and O is kind of the same. Just the unexpected, just burst of pace, the fresh legs, just getting on top of these guys and giving them something extra to think about, forcing them to, again, just hopelessly go long, just boot it down the wings. Half of them were going out of play anyway, so he was contributing to that as well. I think all the subs played their part. Ralston I was worried about because of it just suddenly occurred to me, he was one of those subs where you look at the list and you think, well, I don't even need to think about that. No. He's never going to play. He's just there to make up the numbers. I don't mean that about like in sort of dismissive way. I just think we're not going to have to make a right back substitution in this game unless it's an emergency, which it was. But I caught myself thinking, when was the last time he played?
Yeah.
It must be weeks and weeks and weeks. So I thought he did really well, because I did worry about him just being pitched into a game like that. But yeah, thoroughly great performance from the subs, I thought.
We definitely saw a different side of Celtic in this game, and Ange was touching on it after the match. He was saying, look, it's not all about, and Callum McGregor as well, he was saying no.
Him and Martin O'Neill, that was heartwarming.
Yeah, it was.
It was great, man.
He said it's not all about just forward, attacking. Great. Sometimes you have to dig in, sometimes you're in the trenches, sometimes you have to battle through the salt mines to collect the points. And I thought Celtic defended really, really well. I thought the manager, I think he got it spot on. And I think Ange is just... I don't think Rangers are going to win a thing as long as Ange Postecoglou's Celtic manager. I really don't. I don't see it.
They'll not win the league. No, Celtic will win the league. I think when you rate the two managers again, it'll go down as Michael Beale had done a good job in the second half. Yeah, but there was a first half in that, lads, where his tactics were abysmal, getting into fullback, shelling up, like you said. What did Celtic do in the first half? Played their game, played football, and had the better play, the better opportunities, and were the better team, and done enough in that to win the game. Rangers are always chasing it after that. So again, we'll come out, and Ange even said it after the game. I know what the narrative will be. We were lucky. There's nothing lucky about winning these games. Again, it's the culture, the way Celtic are playing, that they don't have to perform to their best to win these games. You said on the post-match, Jamie, that just that second half wasn't good enough. And I'm like that. While I agreed at the time, having had a bit more time to digest it, I'm like, it was good enough, because you can't go into these games all the time and impose your game on it, because Rangers do some things well. They do press Celtic into finding it difficult to play out from the back. That's why we had to bring on all. But Celtic adapted to it, and they adapted well because their manager's very good, their players are very good, and that's what you need to do. You can have teams that just play this beautiful football all the time, like Arsenal, but when that falls down, they are abysmal and will ship goals. Celtic have got the best of both worlds, because their manager can deal with that, their captain can deal with that. They've got very good players, and we're just going to, if we can keep most of these players and keep bringing in players, we're going to go from strength to strength here. Celtic are geared towards the Champions League. They're not thinking about the Scottish League anymore. They're just going to win that.
And I'm glad it was a close game as well, because...
God, gives them that wee bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, there is that. And it keeps Celtic on their toes as well, because what I said earlier, I really believe, I don't really believe in gaps. I don't think teams are always just the same length, the same distance away from each other, and like things can change. For example, like if we were to get some recruitment wrong, if we lose 4 players and they get 4 players, you never know what can happen, right? And would be foolish to not recognise the pattern, because it used to be that we used to gub Rangers left and right all the time, but then the game started getting closer. They were closer for a long time, and then all of a sudden they've nipped ahead of us, and they went on to win the league.
In all the games that they've won.
No, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I recognise the pattern there. So this is Celtic's opportunity to be like, well, we're not going to let this happen. It keeps Celtic on their toes. There's no complacency in this team, and I don't believe for a single second there's an ounce of it in Ange Postecoglou. He's never given me a single word to give me that impression. So I'm glad it was a close game. I'm glad they think they're getting closer, because it puts the onus on Celtic to keep that gap or even extend it. I hope, you know what, all the talk about Celtic spending all the money they do and all that, I hope we're now in a position next season where I stop getting offended by it. I stop saying, but it's not about that. I hope we lean fully into it and you basically spend about 100 million this summer, basically. just go.
I were loaded.
Full Ted DiBiase. I would absolutely love for that to be the case. Just go full send on the spending. Full spend.
So we're sitting here, we're all having a laugh and a joke, and we're talking about how great that is. But you're right, Stephen. I mean, that we need to remain focused. We need to remain focused for the rest of the league. Because the league is not won. The cup is not won. We're sitting here, we're on the brink of a treble, but we've only won the League Cup, and it's unlikely it's going to go disastrously wrong in the league, but it might, and you really need to keep your eye on it. We've still got Inverness Cali, who, should they be in the final? They only got through because of what something happened there. They only got through, obviously, because of an ineligible player for Queen's Park.
Let football win. Are we going to do this for football, for our own treble, and do it for football?
Yeah, so we're going to pull it out. So On that bombshell, let football win. We shall wrap up this episode of 20 Minute Tim's flagship podcast. Thank you so much to everyone who watches. Thanks to everyone who listens. Thanks to everyone in the comments and YouTube who watches live from the Treble tier. We thought we'd try something different this week. If you enjoy this, if you enjoy our content, please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/20 Minute Tims.
Hit subscribe, y'all.
Hit subscribe, yeah.
Smash that button.
Yes.
Give us a thumbs up, etc.
All that sort of stuff. The YouTube cliches. Yeah, listen. We'll see you next week.